The linebacker position is something we've talked about all offseason long, especially after they added Brian Flores as a coach to overlook them. But what are the things Brian Flores specifically has to pull out of Devin Bush in training camp, as well as Miles Jack? And we want to talk more about TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Where are they going as an edge rusher duo? Could they be the best in the NFL as a pair? Not just TJ Watt, as a pair. There's going to be an interesting talk about that. Joining me today on the Locked On Steelers podcast is Jenna Harner from Channel 11 WPXI. I'm Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday content, as well as our breaking news content. We have that out. Thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Joining me, as always, on Friday is our good friend, Jenna Harner from Channel 11 WPXI here in Pittsburgh. Jenna, what's up?
Chris, I am so happy to be here for many reasons, but one in particular, because this time next week, in less than a week, we are going to be at training camp in Latrobe, and it is going to be absolutely fantastic. It's making its long-awaited return. I know I've never experienced a training camp in Latrobe.
That's right.
I am pumped.
Wow, I didn't even think about that, but yet you haven't. This is your first Latrobe trip.
This is.
It's crazy what the pandemic has done to us and made us forget things here. But I'm excited. And again, I made it very public. I was very happy with Highsmith because it was only a 15-minute drive for me, and I was loving just waking up, going to work, coming right back home instead of driving all the way out to Latrobe. But we are here. And I think one of the biggest things that everyone's going to be looking at, everyone's going to talk about the quarterback and everything like that. But linebacker, to me, is the position that can bring the entire defense together because we talked about the defensive line. I actually talked about that earlier in the week about how if they get it back together, they can be a better run defense and a better pass rushing unit. But a big part of this is also the part in between Minkah Fitzpatrick in the secondary and the defensive line with Cam Hayward, and that's Devin Bush. Everyone is confident about Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi and that group figuring it out. I think a lot of people are confident with Minkah Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds, and those guys behind them, figuring it out. But everyone's wondering what's going to happen with the linebacker position because it was not adequate play last year from Devin Bush and Robert Spillane and Joe Schobert, who they brought in. But they've added Miles Jack, a guy who's had 300 tackle seasons, a guy with a ton of experience, and they've brought in Brian Flores as a coach. I guess my biggest thing is, Jenna, when we're down out in Latrobe, I don't know where Latrobe is on the map. If it is north or south of Pittsburgh.
If you're Pittsburgh, it's east.
It's east, but is it like when I say, so I guess out would be the right term.
Out in Latrobe.
Out in Latrobe. There you go. But out in Latrobe, what's the biggest thing that you're looking to see Brian Flores pull out of Devin Bush? What is the thing that like if you see it in camp, you're like, ooh, okay, this is different from what we saw last year?
I know this might be a little bit cliche in a sense, but just Devin Bush getting back to himself, getting back to the player that he knows that he can be and the player that he was before his injury. I think building upon that and seeing his confidence grow, and I'm not saying that as if he doesn't have confidence, because when we talked with him at minicamp, he clearly, at OTAs, or no minicamp, everything all blends.
Same thing. Yeah. We were at the practice facility.
We talked to him at the practice facility in the off season at some point. You could see he kind of had that confidence, and it wasn't that cockiness you and I talked about, but he kind of just had like, I get to come into the season and play football. And I think if he just kind of can keep things simple and go back to the game that he had, and we're seeing the Devin Bush that the Steelers envisioned when they drafted him and the player that they know he's capable of being, then I think you're going to see a lot of the defense kind of revolve around that and feed off of that. I think that's, the fact that they do have Brian Flores looking to pull that out of Devin Bush, the fact that they have Myles Jack working alongside him. And we know that he said he likes working alongside Devin Bush, and he feels that there's a lot of things the two can kind of work with each other and grow with each other and build with each other on. I think you're going to see a lot of good things, but it is going to be, is he going to be that same player now that he does not have to spend the entirety of the offseason and a decent majority of training camp like last year, where his minutes had to be managed and he wasn't on the field consistently?
That is a big part of this, is that him being on the field consistently, he said, will help, just with him trusting himself, and also him being able to see through things and kind of feel through things and get the more experience to say, hey, when I make a mistake, I'm going right back out there, I'm correcting it, instead of having to come back to the huddle, waiting his turn for whenever he might go back out there. It's a thing where they're going to be able to trust him. I'll tell you one thing, and part of it ties into those mistake parts and being out there more consistently, Jenna. When the pads go on at training camp, which usually happens, I think, the third or fourth day, when the pads go on, the biggest thing that I think Steelers fans need to see, and this is if you're going to Latrobe, when you're sitting on the hill or in the bleachers and you're watching the practice, if you're watching the same practice as I am, this is what I'm checking for. How quickly does he make his reads? When they're running the ball to Najee Harris or Kalen Ballage or Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland, whoever, how quickly is he getting to those holes? How is he deciphering things? Does he look like he's back in command? When he first arrived as a rookie, there was a lot of talk from Vince Williams, from Keith Butler, all the guys around the Steelers were saying, man, this kid is figuring it out. He's talking, he's calling out the defense, he's doing everything. They need Devin Bush to be in charge, and that is something that Brian Flores has to pull out of him. And I think what may really be the key here, and what may be the best element that does help him pull that out of him, is what Myles Jack was telling us that he says is different about Brian Flores. He talked about, hey, when I'm with Brian Flores, it's not, if I get kind of right, it's still not right. If I get it mostly right, it's still not right. I have to be perfect in my assignment. And he said it's a all the way right, or you're just wrong. There's no 98%. It's 100% do your job correctly. And if Brian Flores can get that into Devin Bush and get him to be that exact with his assignments and understanding his roles, and get him back that confidence, like you said, back to do those types of things, I think that puts him in the position to be that kind of commander on the field. And now the Steelers do have the guy who's the glue at the linebacker position for the defense to pair, make sure that the secondary is in sync with the linebackers, who's in sync with the defensive line.
I was saying, you took the words right out of my mouth, and the fact that what Myles Jack has told us and what a lot of these guys have told us about Brian Flores and the way he leads and the way he works with these guys and the way that he, tries to get them to fix their mistakes by saying, there's no gray area here. It's right or it's not. And a lot of the guys that we've talked to throughout the offseason have said how much they appreciate that kind of approach that Flores brings to the defense as a whole, but in particular, the linebackers.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about what we're going to see from the linebackers in training camp, because there's specific things that I think are really important to test that we'll get to see, and things that specific drills and practice points that I want to point out to Steelers fans, like, hey, not only if you're going there, but listen for these things, look for these things on Twitter if you can't make it to training camp. We'll talk about those points in just a second here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Built Bar. Of course, Built Bar, one of their newest flavors is the coconut brownie chunk puff flavor. Now, if you don't know the difference, a Built Bar is an amazing protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It comes covered in 100% chocolate, low in calories, low in sugar, but high in protein. There's also the puff bars. And if you get a Built Puff Bar, you're getting basically the same thing, covered in 100% real chocolate. Gets all your health benefits, but also it comes in a chewy, marshmallowy center that is easier to go down. It's lighter on you, and it tastes amazing. And both of them are now available in the coconut brownie chunk puff flavor. If you get the coconut brownie chunk flavor, it's amazing. It's fluffy. You get the coconut. It's like you're eating a brownie. And again, you're eating all of this, and it's good for you. And don't forget, when you get a Built Bar or a Built Puff, they are all made with collagen protein, which means your body is absorbing the proteins more efficiently, and it provides tons of other health benefits. You can eat something that actually tastes good and is actually good for you by getting a Built Bar or a Built Puff. So go to Built.com built.com right now, and you can order the new flavors and all the other flavors that are available right now at built.com by using the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order when you visit built.com. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. She's Jenna Harner, and we're talking about things that we're wanting to see Brian Flores pull out of Devin Bush and the Steelers linebackers in training camp. Because, again, it's a lot. It's easy to say, oh well, he just needs to get better, or oh, he just needs him to be, just to make more tackles or be better in coverage. But where are those things going to happen? How, what specific drills are going to be the points of emphasis that you want to see driven home by Brian Flores? And there's a few ones in specifically, Jenna. Now, Jenna, you haven't been to Latrobe, but you have been to Steelers training camp, so you do know. It was at Heinz Field, but you do know the basic things that they work on. And I think that is I think one of the biggest things that we're going to see, and this is something that happens every day, pads or no pads, 7 shots. Yep. Where is Devin Bush on 7 shots? How is he performing? Is he, if it's like a quick trick play, run play option type of thing, where is he? If it's a passing play, is he in his position? Is he challenging for the football? How is he performing against tight ends like Pat Freiermuth and Zach Gentry? Those are going to be things that I want to see, how sharp he looks in those red zone moments, because if he's winning those moments, he's most likely going to be able to win more of the regular moments, play in and play out.
And it's funny you mentioned, too, him against tight ends, because obviously there's the size difference there. I mean, him going against Pat Freiermuth and Zach Gentry, both pretty big guys. There's kind of always that, hey, how does this match up? Does the offense look to exploit that, knowing that if they have that matchup, deep in the end zone, something along those lines. So, how does he put himself in position? Where is he? Like you said, is he kind of making the reads? Is he taking command there? I'm also intrigued, and this is always like one of my favorite drills. I know it's one of yours to watch too, but backs on backers.
Yeah, that's where I was going next. Let's go.
It's the best. It's just, and I don't know if there's anyone more on the planet. Like, you love it. I love it. Mike Tomlin loves
eats it up.
Like it from observation only. I can't put words in people's mouths, obviously, but to me, Mike Tomlin has no more, that's his favorite thing. Like, if you told him, it's like telling him it's Christmas morning, only no, it's bad.
No, I agree. I mean, Jenna, how many times have we seen him, two guys go at it, it's a stalemate, or one guy wins, and he says, no, put those 2 back in there. And he'll look for specific matchups. I really think you can often tell who he's pushing to see more of. Like back when James Conner was getting his first year of starting, when Le'Veon Bell wasn't around, he was throwing James Conner in there all the time. Nope, get back in there, 3-0. I want to see you block it. I want to see you take these guys on, because he knew James Conner had to improve in pass protection to keep Ben Roethlisberger alive. So I have a feeling Mike Tomlin is going to be saying, Devin Bush, 5'5", get in there now. And if he makes a mistake, he's going to put him back in there. And I think they want to push him to see how much he can do it. And the other thing is, it's interesting with backs on backers, the biggest guys don't always win. It is a very mixed bag. Vince Williams wasn't the biggest guy, but I remember when him and Roosevelt Nix, when they went up against each other, it was just like explosions happening when they ran it, when they went in line, backs on backers. So I look at moments like that. Who can Devin Bush be one of those guys that's like, hey, I don't care if it's Najee Harris, I don't care if it's Derek Watt, Connor Hayward, Benny Snell, whoever's coming through there, and I got to deal with in pass protection, I'm going to be able to take them out. I think that's what Mike Tomlin's going to want to see from Devin Bush, is can he show that tenacity? Because there were times where Devin Bush showed that tenacity when he was in his prime. I think that Mike Tomlin needs to see him get back to that point, and that's something where else I think Brian Flores needs to help make sure Devin Bush is there.
Yeah, having that, snarl, having that, toughness. And obviously, again, we can say all these guys are incredibly tough. They're players in the National Football League. But having that grit that, you're not going to beat me no matter who it is. And, having that, again, I feel like it ties kind of back to having that confidence in himself, where he knows last season was not what, he envisioned, or I think what anybody envisioned, whether it was the organization, fans, everybody across the board did not see Devin Bush having that type of season. And I think for himself too, he'll say it, over and over. So for him to kind of come in and establish himself in just small things like drills like this, that I think can show, hey, he's trending towards going in that right direction, where he sees himself, he sees his game, the Steelers see his game, because again, with them not picking up his 5th-year option, that kind of said things without saying things. And as much as Devin Bush is saying he doesn't feel like he has to prove himself, which I think he sincerely means, he's just excited to go back out there. I think there is going to be part of him where he's like, hey, I am this player. I'm healthy. Watch what I can do.
Exactly. And part of the healthy also has to be, again, that agility of sideline to sideline, not just against the run, but in coverage. And this may be something that comes not as much in the 11-on-11 drills, but I also want to see how he runs with running backs and tight ends in coverage drills, because that's also a fun thing to see, is when everyone pairs off, you can watch the corners go up against the receivers, you can watch the linebackers and running backs, and all these different groups will be going up against each other. But they need to see Devin Bush, not just like necessarily in traditional man formation where he's just running with one guy, but like play a zone. Can you cover the middle part of the field? Can you go sideline? Can you go go one direction, stop, go the other, and read quarterback's eyes? I think there needs to be, Brian Flores needs to work those instincts with him to get that with him. And because some people say, oh, he can't cover tight ends. That's completely untrue. He has had bad moments, but he's also had very good moments. If you look back to an interception he had on Mark Andrews when he was targeted against the Ravens a few years ago, that's an example of what he could do when he's at the highest of highs. Last year he wasn't at the highest of highs. There were problems, but I do think that there's a big part of this is health, is making sure that he's confident in his abilities to get to the point and to challenge the point, and not just challenge, getting to the point, but like making sure like, hey, like I can jump up and go get this ball without worrying if I come down wrong that my knee's going to get messed up. That's something that I think he talked about. I didn't know how to land last year. That's something that I think is out of his mental processes of having to worry about.
No, absolutely. And again, having that, whenever anybody has a knee injury, especially the severity of an ACL tear, there is always that concern of, am I going to re-injure this? Because it's so mental, in the sense where you were just cutting, you were just moving, and all of a sudden you feel it, pretty much immediately when it happens. And, having that a little bit of, you come back in and you're a player and you're like, all right, I'm confident in what I can do. I know I can do this. But at the same time, there is that little bit of hesitation, just because of the fact that it was like, hey, this is what I did last time, and this is what happened. I need to make sure I can do everything I can to say, hey, this isn't going to happen again. I'm going to land the right way. I'm not going to make that type of cut when it's so routine for you as a player. So I think last season too, part of it for Devin Bush was kind of getting the feel back of being like, all right, how do I cut? How do I move? As you can see, I'm trying to like cut and move here.
No, I get what you're saying, but it's exactly what I think that the Steelers want to see from him, is that trust back in him, but not just have the trust, but also have the ability that they drafted him at 10th overall. They traded up to go get him as. It won't just be enough for him to be adequate this season. If he's adequate, I do think it's a help for the Steelers, but they need him. If he wants a nice extension with the Steelers, they need him to get back to playing at the level that he was in his first couple seasons. Again, in his first season, he registered 109 combined tackles, the most by a Steelers rookie in team history. He was flying all over the place. He was doing his job. He had 26 tackles in 5 games to start his 2020 season before he tore his ACL and was out for the year. That dropped down to 70 tackles in 14 games in 2021. That can't happen. Now, again, part of that's the defensive line and their issues. But Devin Bush is a guy who's 24 years old. He's now ready to kind of step forward in his career. This has to be the year where he's showing that competence again, and not just being an okay player, but being a leader in the linebacker room. And the Steelers, I think TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, they've got leaders. They like, the defense knows who they are. So he doesn't have to be the focus point, but he has to be a young guy who starts showing like, hey, like I'm on that cusp of getting into that conversation again. If Brian Flores pulls that out of him again, I think we need to see it on 7 at the 7 shots drill, backs on backers, and pass coverage drills.
Yeah.
If those 3 things look sharp in training camp, those are the signs to me that Brian Flores has done his job and revitalized Devin Bush's career.
Absolutely. And that is a huge tell. And that is going to be, I think, not only what a lot of fans are looking for, but what you and I are looking for, just to see, is he taking those steps? And if he isn't, then it's going to be, what is Brian Flores going to do? How is Myles Jack going to play kind of a role? Will he assist in that in any way? Because I know we always talk about, too, iron sharpening iron. I think you can also look at Myles Jack. And if he's going out there and he's doing all of these things, flying around, making plays, all those types of things that we look for among the linebackers, especially too, just guys on the defense in general, then I think you're going to start to see, okay, he's doing that. That will also play a role. Will Devin Bush jump to, try and say, hey, all right, I'm going to try and do this too. Am I going to get there?
Absolutely. There are other linebackers on the team, and I want to talk about the edge rushers because they're going to be crucial in this. I want to talk about where they could end up this season based off of what Alex Highsmith said recently on Sirius XM Radio. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our good friends at Bet Online. If you don't know about Bet Online, get on it. It's going to be the #1 place that's going to help you learn about all the betting stats and sports information you need to put money down and win money when you're putting money down on sports events. Now, of course, Major League Baseball is well underway. You got the All-Star weekends over with. Everyone's getting back into the groove of getting back to the second half of the Major League Baseball season. So if you want to make money on baseball before football starts, the best way to learn about that is betonline.net. It's going to give you all your odds, your ends, your betting on opportunities, and the best chances for you to make money by betting on baseball. So go to betonline.net right now. It'll give you all your sports wagering information. And if you can do this on your website, on your desktop, your laptop, or your mobile device, and you can learn more about the trends of the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. So we're having some technical issues with our commercial starting. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, where our commercial breaks do work. Jeez, I was like clicking this button. I'm like, come on through with it, and it
timed out so well though. You ended and then it went. It's great.
I'm not editing that out. I'm going to leave that because that was too funny. I was just looking at Jenna staring at me like, "Where's the commercial break, Chris?"
I'm like, waiting. Commercial breaks usually cough a little bit, quick adjustments.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith as a duo. Now, Alex Highsmith recently went on Sirius XM Radio, said, I want this to be a double-digit sack season for me. He had 6 sacks last year, a good upgrade, showing his potential. But now you're talking about him and TJ Watt side by side. TJ Watt tied the NFL sack record last year. The Steelers have led the NFL in sacks for 5 straight years, all 5 years of TJ Watt's career. Now, thing is, Alex Highsmith wants to step up in his production on that end. And I guess my question to you, Jenna, is when you look around the league and you look at pass rushing, there's edge rushing duos. There's guys like the Raiders have Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. The Max Crosby, I believe, is a free agent right now due to other situations. But the Chargers, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. The Titans, they have Harold Landry and Bud Dupree. The Niners, Nick Bosa and Arik Armstead. There's guys out there that are out there. But where can the Steelers finish this year if Alex Highsmith does take a step forward in his career and TJ Watt just continues to be TJ Watt?
And I think also, too, a big factor, too, is the health. Because remember last year, and it's funny if you think about it, the groin bug. Everybody
had the groin bug.
I hate doing this, but it's Oprah's favorite things. It's you get a groin injury, you get a groin. Everybody had one. So I think that obviously plays a huge factor here. But I really do think that we are going to see that jump from Alex Highsmith because he showed that last year. That was something he said, coming into his sophomore season, he did not want to have a sophomore slump where, we see sometimes guys fall off a little bit. He increased his production. And, there were times of the year where he and TJ both weren't healthy. But I think, anytime you're alongside a guy like TJ Watt, and especially for such a young player like Highsmith, who, we see the drills every day at practice, TJ goes first and Alex follows. And then after, as soon as it's done, TJ's pulling him off to the side and saying, hey, we're doing this. This is working. This isn't working. We're working on this. working with Highsmith on things, because I think TJ Watt also knows the upside that Alex Highsmith has to his game and the potential that he has. But I do think it's a very realistic possibility that at the end of the season, if both of those guys not only stay healthy, but they both TJ Watt just continues to play the way TJ Watt plays. But if Alex Highsmith does, because frankly, 6 sacks last year in your second year is pretty solid when you're alongside a guy like TJ Watt. But I think if Highsmith does get to those double-digit numbers, not only are you talking about more production from the Steelers defense, but again, like you and I have talked about, there's just so much more consistency where the defensive line is allowing these guys to be able to get to the quarterback easier. And teams are a little bit more nervous to throw it down, downfield because of the protection that the Steelers are offering back there. So I think realistically, we could be talking about the fact that this is a very, very solid top 5, top 3, top, maybe top.
Just keep going. Just keep going.
I don't know about say, like, of course, you ask both of those guys, of course, they're going to tell you they could, be the top tandem. But I really think realistically, again, if the defense comes together, I think the way a lot of people think it might this year, you're going to see production from both of those guys, no doubt. But I think Highsmith taking that next step just propels them to be that much more successful.
You can only double team so many people. TJ Watt gets double teamed. Cam Hayward gets double teamed. They now have Larry Ogunjobi. I don't know if he'll get double teamed, but he's a guy who had 7 sacks last season. You have Tyson Alulu back. Chris Wormley had 7 sacks last season, and now Alex Highsmith comes in. If Alex Highsmith comes in and he gets to the point where he's threatening as a double-digit sack type of player, the way Bud Dupree was at the end of his time with the Pittsburgh Steelers, that is going to pose a lot of tough questions for offenses. Like, who the heck do we block?
Yeah, exactly. Because again, you're stuck. Okay, of course you're going with TJ. Of course you're going with Cam Hayward. But then again, if Ogunjobi kind of comes out and I think there's just so much potential here. Also, we have another dog appearance. Hi, Zeke.
Oh, Zeke's back. What's up, Zeke? Zeke, if you're watching on YouTube, you can kind of see a little bit of his fur at times when he pokes his head up in the camera. But Zeke, Jenna's good friend Zeke, always makes appearances on the show. But Jenna, last thing I have for you here, I don't know if you noticed this, and I joked about this the other day, but it really seems like part of what's made this duo special, as far as Highsmith and Watt, is how they seem inseparable at times. These are guys who, during practice, they're even when they're not on the field working a specific drill together, they're working on hand fighting together. They're like doing stuff. They're like challenging each other in all these different ways. They're always around each other. And then in this past month, they both got married in the same month. And I'm like, no, wait a second. Do you two ever do anything else like away from each other? Like, this is ridiculous.
We always talk about the fact that, yes, TJ Watt's brother, Derek, is on the team, but I think there's the 4th Watt brother.
The 4th Watt is
it's Alex Highsmith.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. But it's another point where I think it's really great for the Steelers that they're seeing this camaraderie, this coming togetherness, and this leadership from TJ Watt. And I think the ability to follow from Alex Highsmith to be a role player, because you can have, it's great to have leaders, but you need to have really good role players filling on the defense. I think Alex Highsmith has learned how to follow, and he's a young guy who now is in his 3rd year, who's ready to take off. And if he does, watch out for the Steelers pass rush. They will be finishing with a 6th consecutive year leading the NFL in sacks. Jenna, we got to get out of here, but thanks so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let me know we can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Well, thank you as always for having me, especially on a Friday, because next Friday we are going to be at training camp and we will be thriving. But you can find me on Twitter.
Hot.
It's going to be, I know it's going to be so hot. That's the one thing you kind of forget with training camp is you're like, oh yeah, no, it's warm. It's like, no, you're under the hot sun. So we're going to be getting some color, getting our suntan on. But you can find me on Twitter at Jenna Harner 11, Instagram Jenna_Harner, and on WPXI here in Pittsburgh. Be sure to join us all throughout training camp because we got a whole lot of content coming your way.
Absolutely. Do check out Channel 11. They do an amazing job. Thanks, Jenna, for coming on the show. You can find me, Chris Carter, on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Follow this show, the Locked On Steelers podcast, on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content, and read my work at SteelersNow.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. We'll be getting you ready for the final days before Steelers training camp next week. Until then, enjoy your weekend. We'll see you soon.